All right, just by way of getting to know me a little bit, I will be doing a little introduction. So, I am currently a PIMO, so physically and mentally out ministerial servant. And yes, I don't have my face here as my exit is not complete. Until that opportune time comes, I shall have my beautiful face revealed at the most opportune time. And I'll even give a little JW life bio when that time comes. But for now, let me just tell you guys a bit about myself. I was in the organization for quite some time. You could say that I was born in it. My mother was studying in my infancy, and my father was not in this organization. I grew up going to meetings, believing in the doctrines of JW, but I also wanted to enjoy myself. So when I turned 18, I had the choice to do what I wanted, and of course, I stopped going to the meetings. And essentially, during this time when I was growing up, because my dad was not in this religion, I kind of had a lot more leeway. So I wasn't like fully into this religion as far as both parents indoctrinating me, but I did have to go to the Kingdom Hall and sit there and go to assemblies and basically every single part of the whole indoctrination experience. So in that sense, I was essentially fully in, and so I stopped going when I was 18. And this was a very short time that I stopped associating with witnesses completely. I spent about 2 years in quote unquote the world, but then I came back to the organization. I was in a bad place at the time. That's probably the reason why I don't want to say persuaded, but I guess you could sort of say in a way I was persuaded back to the organization, because I was never mentally out, I was only physically out. I wasn't baptized at the time, I wasn't a publisher, so I wasn't shunned or anything. I was essentially invited to someone's baptism, and I came and I thought, I'll just go and I won't take in any of the doctrines or anything. I'll just go there and clap and then leave. But that wasn't exactly how it happened. I just want to say pretty much the power of indoctrination in this organization is really strong. If you've been raised to believe certain things to happen and certain people act in a certain way, you're not going to detach from that thought process until you truly sit back and really analyze what your beliefs are. In other words, critical thinking. I've always believed that this organization was the truth, so even though I was physically out, once my life was in a bad situation, which it was, I thought the solution was in the organization. So I came in hard, not super hard, but enough to be baptized in 8 months. I had some doubts answered, although now that I think about it, those answers weren't truly answers. I guess a lot of them were satisfactory, but some of them were not really, they weren't really an answer that was an answer. Like one of the questions I had, for instance, was resting. Like I didn't understand the concept of God having to rest. I can't remember the exact explanation. I think it had to do with God being in rest this whole time. as in he's observing the completion of his task. And I just sort of said, okay, sure, I don't really know much about the Bible, so I'll just accept what the elder says about this explanation. So I spent a few years just fully immersed in this organization, spending time with other witnesses, having spiritual goals, auxiliary pioneering when able to, and all that stuff. I think about 3 years after, my feelings of doubt went from creeping into full-on assault. This led to a downfall of spirituality, but then things happened and I eventually became a ministerial servant the following year. And this made me want to put an even more amount of effort into the congregation. I felt that at this point, even though I felt inadequate, that if I was going to be appointed a ministerial servant, that must mean that Jehovah's hand is helping me, and that I've essentially been given the green light as to being in this organization and being someone that can help others. And I think it must have been the following year. Yeah, it was the following year. We had the territories were completely revamped as the Watchtower organization decided to reduce the number of kingdom halls and put many of the congregations in to try to smush the congregations together. And all this about having a number of empty seats and all this stuff was given the explanation. Many people say that it's because the governing body wants to pocket some of the money, or they're losing money, things like that. In all honesty, my current opinion is I don't really care what the difference is, but it happened anyways. So this remapping of the territory put me into a different congregation, and that's pretty much where I truly became PIMO. I never auxiliary pioneer. I barely gave comments. I really didn't want to go out in service. And in that congregation, I never gave an honest field service report. So essentially, a field service report is the tracking log for the number of hours and number of certain accomplishments you've done preaching. So the magic number, which I've always known, was 10 hours. So I would just write 10 hours, yep. That way nobody would question me, and I could just shrivel up and disappear into the midst of the congregation without having any suspicion. I still went out in service and occasionally gave comments, but the heart was definitely not in it. Last minute finding comments or just reading scriptures, anything that was very minimal. No reading into the Watchtower ahead of time, or reading all the publications and having these auxiliary answers that were like 30 seconds long with fully articulated points. None of that stuff. It was also hard to make friends in that congregation too, so that really didn't help, as friends are kind of one of the big reasons why anyone would stay in any kind of organization. If we fast forward once again, about a year and a half, we get to my awakening. The pandemic life made it a lot easier to be relatively free. You don't have to go out in service, so you're saving time. You can turn your video off on Zoom, and yeah, like you don't have this association, a bunch of people questioning you or having conversations. And so one day, I don't really know how or why, it was just YouTube algorithm magic. So basically, a video popped up on my feed. It was a video critiquing the Caleb and Sophia video, and as soon as I saw that, I was just like, all right, this is apostate material. I shouldn't be watching it, but I was also curious as to how other people viewed something that was supposed to be as innocent as these Caleb and Sophia videos. And so I thought, maybe I'll just see this and just hear what he has to say. And I watched it, and I thought, he has some valid points about how, it's seemingly that is a loud chopper. Let's wait for that to pass by. Of all the times to do that, really? I can't even tell if you can hear it on my microphone, but what was I saying? Where was I? Something about, oh yes. So I've watched the Caleb and Sophia videos, rebuttal, and I thought, he has some valid points. I guess it is true. We kind of, like people would say, these videos, they're just innocent, they just teach children about, basic things, like not to lie and all this stuff. But there is an overall objective in these videos. They're not just teaching mannerisms, they're also pointing people, children, towards the religion. It's essentially an indoctrination process. The Watchtower likes to use a scripture which points to the parents needing to inculcate their children into the teachings of the Bible. So in this case, the doctrines of the organization. So obviously that's what the videos were about. But I thought he also missed a lot of main points about the organization. And so I only watched like a few videos and then stopped watching because I thought it would be mentally damaging. I got to a certain point of PIMO where I just didn't want to be in the organization anymore. I just felt, I didn't have any desire to do anything. I didn't want to go out in service. I didn't want to answer. I didn't care about making friends in the congregation because nobody liked the things I liked, and the things I like aren't even supposed to be likable. So how could I express myself if my whole being is to be rejected within this organization? And that leads to, of course, having a partner. So how am I supposed to find a wife if I have to be the spiritual head? I don't want to be the spiritual head, so that means I can't marry, which is all kinds of no when it comes to me, especially with the way they exhibit sexual suppression. So I felt like, you know, there's no way I can be in this organization. I'm gonna have to leave someday. So I was just physically in there, mentally gone, but I didn't have any sort of desire to act, as I didn't know what was out there. I just thought this organization was the truth, but I just didn't want to go through with the things that they expected us to do. I essentially felt like a bird trapped in a small cage, just unable to open my wings. I truly just wanted to be free, to be able to express myself and just be who I am. And I just didn't want to have to come to terms with the fact that I have to be a certain person when we're all so unique. What's the point of being alive? How could you call yourself being happy if you have to conform to a certain kind of personality? I was always telling myself, why can't I talk about this? Why can't I say that? Who can I befriend? There's also the fact that I had no close friends in this organization. So many of my peers were getting married, and they also moved. So aside from not having a close friend and not wanting to make new friends, the friends that I already had were kind of distant as well, which made it just impossible for me to even try to come back or even have any sort of ability to bounce back in this organization. At one point, I started watching the videos of the Caleb and Sophia rebuttals, and then on my recommended, it pointed to a certain channel, a certain apostate channel that I'd imagine every single ex-JW would know about or is watching one way or another. And I was just amazed that there was things that I never knew about the organization. Points were explained in a logical way, and I just kept watching more and more as these videos gave me validations of the feelings I had, and it was very entertaining to watch. It was kind of a transfiguration in a sense. And as I was going through these videos, I was recommended to a certain video which brought to light Watchtower's complete imperfection. It was a video on Roderick Watkins. If you don't know who that is, I suggest you do a search. Essentially, he was a prominent elder who was quite the sexual predator for years. And this whole process of how the organization handled this issue was just completely disgusting, which further enveloped me into watching more videos. This was how I was able to see the utter hypocrisy and the arbitrary rules that the governing body made, which opened my eyes. Unfortunately, due to my circumstances, I can't and couldn't just walk away. I had to set myself in a better situation so that I can make a proper exit. Hopefully it won't be too long, but if we get to a point where they want us to get back to meetings and physically go out in service, it doesn't matter. I'm out. I'm not going to be preaching to anyone about something I don't believe in. There's no way I can pretend to do that, and there's no way I can go into the Kingdom Hall and put on this fake face for extended periods of time. Plus, I don't really feel like driving out to the Kingdom Hall and wasting my gas doing that and wasting my time or wasting my gas going out in the service. I'd rather not do that. So, all in all, it's my hope to share my gripes about this religion, this organization, I should say. Or I guess you could kind of say religion too, because I don't know about the Bible anymore. But I don't want to, I'll show my perspective, but I don't want to shove my opinion into anyone's face. I just want you guys to hear what I have to say and just be able to set aside any kind of bias as to how things should be perceived, as to how the Bible should be perceived, as to how the organization should be perceived. If you're going to watch this kind of video, you have to hear what we have to say and then come to your conclusion, rather than coming to your conclusion as you listen to what we say. And so I hope that my experiences and my questions about certain principles will help you to understand not only how this organization works, but also how the Bible is interpreted in many ways, and hopefully my video will help you to see how you would interpret such writings and to come to your conclusion as to whether you believe that this book was inspired by God or not. Hope you guys enjoy.